The Far Ranger wasn't built for ghost stories. She was a battered salvage ship, old engines, older crew, and debts heavy enough to make any fool chase long-lost wrecks drifting in forbidden sectors. Captain Voss sat in the cracked pilot's chair when the distress signal pinged their comms. A faint, stuttering pulse in an alien dialect none of the crew could fully translate. But some words were universal. SOS, life signs detected, reward guaranteed. Could be a trap, muttered Kayla, the youngest of the crew and the only one who still cared if they came home alive. She hunched over the scanner, her fingers tapping nervous rhythms on the console. Could be a payday, Voss growled. He pushed the throttle. The Far Ranger veered off its usual course into the dead zone, a swath of deep space where whole fleets vanished centuries ago. Hours later, through the cracked viewport, they saw it. A colossal cruiser, blackened and drifting like a tomb sealed by the stars themselves. Alien runes flickered faintly across the hull, most unreadable, but one word pulsed every few seconds in dull red: eternal. They locked docking clamps with a hiss and shudder. Kayla, Voss, and two grizzled deckhands suited up, their breath loud in the helmets. Inside the alien ship, the silence felt alive. Oppressive, thick, broken only by the echo of their magnetic boots. Flashlights cut through the dark to reveal claw marks along the walls, dried fluid that might once have been blood, and signs of a last stand, barricades welded from armor plating, half-melted plasma rifles, scorched deck plating. Whoever fought here lost, badly. Kayla's scanner beeped. A single weak heat signature flickered ahead, near what looked like the command nexus. Against her better judgment, she led the way, torch in one hand, scanner in the other. Voss trailed close, shotgun ready. He hated ghosts, but debt was worse than any corpse. They reached the nexus doors, fused half open by ancient explosions. Beyond lay a vast chamber with a cracked glass stasis pod at its center. Alien script crawled along the walls and the stale air smelled like old decay and burnt ozone. Kayla crept closer. Inside the pod, a creature lay motionless. 6 limbs folded tight to its chest. Chitin plates cracked like old stone. Its eyes were sealed shut, dead for decades. Or so she thought. Her scanner spiked red. The corpse twitched. A rasping growl filled the chamber, rolling off the metal walls. From the shadows behind the pod, other shapes stirred. Skeletal figures, armored bodies fused to the deck, waking up one by one like insects shaking off winter. Kayla stumbled back, torch clattering to the floor. Voss stepped in front of her, shotgun raised, eyes wide with a fear he hadn't felt since his first combat drop 20 years ago. Back to the airlock, now. But it was too late. The dead ship was awake, and it was hungry for the living once more. Kayla's boots skidded on the slick deck plating as she backpedaled, her helmet display flickering from the electromagnetic surge swelling through the alien cruiser's bones. The sound, a low, bone-rattling hum, vibrated the bulkheads like a heartbeat resurrected from the grave. Behind her, Captain Voss fired once. The shotgun's roar was deafening in the confined command chamber. The nearest corpse, or whatever passed for a corpse in this crypt, staggered back, a hole blown through brittle chitin. But it didn't drop. It hissed, barbed limbs flexing, and lunged again. "Fall back," Voss bellowed, ejecting the spent shell with a clack and ramming another slug into place. Kayla grabbed his sleeve, dragging him toward the half-welded blast door. Through the cracked viewport behind the stasis pod, cold starlight spilled in, revealing more of them. Shapes moved between shattered consoles and blackened support pillars, once royal warriors maybe, or common soldiers but all twisted by rot and some virus that mocked death. The crewmen outside the chamber, Gore and Helix, heard the commotion through comms and tried to override the bulkhead seal. Sparks flew as they pried at the old controls with a salvage cutter. Inside, Kayla screamed coordinates at them, while Voss kept firing into the horde pressing closer. One of the creatures leapt, claws flashing. It struck Voss square in the chest, knocking him hard against the nexus wall. His breath caught in a wet gasp. Armor plates cracked under the force. He forced the muzzle up and fired point blank, the blast showering the chamber in chunks of black gore. Kayla felt her mind split between panic and instinct. She grabbed Voss's arm and heaved him upright, ignoring the hot stab in her shoulder, where alien talons had raked her suit. "Voss, move!" she shrieked over the shrill comms. Outside, Gore finally smashed the emergency latch. The blast door squealed open just enough for Kayla to shove her captain through. Helix laid down covering fire with a salvaged plasma cutter, bright blue arcs carving through 2 staggering corpses. They fled into the main corridor, a rusting artery lit by flickering emergency strips. Behind them, the horde howled, crawling on walls and ceiling like insects with a predator's cunning. "Helix, seal it!" Voss rasped, one arm clamped to his bleeding side. Helix slammed the override. The ancient door screeched shut just as skeletal claws slammed into the other side, pounding dents into the thick metal. Muffled screeches echoed through the corridor. For a breathless moment, all 4 stood gasping in the narrow hall. Their helmet lamps flickered over each other's terrified eyes. Then Kayla said it. What none dared speak aloud until now. "They're not dead. They're infected, reanimating on residual bioenergy." Gore spat into his helmet mic. "So what now, genius? We can't blast our way through a ship crawling with alien plague zombies." Voss straightened, pain carved deep in his face but eyes still fierce. "No, but we can fry them." He pointed to the old reactor schematic flickering on Kayla's scanner. The core was unstable, alien design, half shut down centuries ago when this place died. "If we overload it," Kayla whispered, realizing what he meant, "we vaporize the nest." Voss gave her a grim grin. "Exactly. We came for salvage. We leave with our lives. Or they don't leave with theirs." Outside the sealed door, the pounding grew louder, more desperate. The crew exchanged a single silent nod, then turned and sprinted deeper into the corpse of the cruiser, into the belly of a ship that should never have woken again. Their footsteps echoed through the ancient corridors, once a gleaming artery of an alien empire, now just a rusting tomb crawling with the hungry dead. Kayla wiped sweat from her eyes, breath rasping loud inside her cracked helmet. She forced herself not to look at the dark stains on the walls, or the half-eaten shapes littering side alcoves like discarded tools. Behind her, Helix muttered prayers to any god that might listen. Gore kept checking their rear, plasma cutter humming low, eyes wide as the pounding on the sealed bulkhead behind them faded into the distance. Only Voss stayed silent, though his left arm hung uselessly, bone broken under the armor. The group rounded a bend, and there it was, the primary reactor chamber. A cathedral of old tech and alien symbols pulsing weakly in the gloom. Bioluminescent cables crisscrossed the walls like veins. Broken power conduits spilled flickers of electricity into ankle-deep pools of coolant. Helix whistled under his breath. "If we blow this, the whole ship goes supernova, Captain. You sure we won't die before these freaks do?" Voss didn't smile. He just trudged forward. "We set the chain reaction on a time fuse. Gives us just enough window to reach the docking bay and jump to our tug." Kayla's eyes flicked to her scanner. Dozens of movement blips skittered behind them, and worse, ahead too. She closed her eyes a second, hearing again the archivist's words back on the station. "No one opens the silent viceroy. It's cursed, not just dead." Too late now. Gore planted an explosive at the first regulator panel. Helix started hacking the ancient core's manual controls, cursing at the alien language as glyphs shimmered and pulsed under his fingers. Voss stood guard, shotgun slung awkwardly with his good arm. His visor reflected the shifting glow of the reactor, like a heartbeat pulsing too fast to sustain life. Then Kayla heard it, a chorus of claws on metal. She spun, flashlight beam catching the first shapes crawling along the ceiling ribs like spiders, fanged skulls splitting open in silent screeches. "Contact! Multiple!" she shouted. Helix slammed the final command into the console. 3 minutes! Move! The first infected warrior dropped behind Gore, but before it landed, Voss stepped in, shotgun roaring. Another beast's talons swiped across his thigh, nearly taking his leg. He roared back, driving the shotgun muzzle under its jaw and blasting the head clean off. "Kyla, get them to the lift," he barked, voice cracking with pain. She grabbed Gore, half dragging him from the console where he'd been arming the last charge. Helix scrambled behind, firing short bursts from the plasma cutter. Green sparks lit the shadows as more corpses shrieked and lunged. The team burst back into the corridor. Alarms screamed. Under their feet, the deck plates vibrated with the reactor's death rattle. Behind them, the reactor room lit up with an unnatural glow. Shadows of the swarm skittered against the walls, howling in mindless hunger. They reached the emergency lift, an old cargo cage barely large enough for 4 living humans and their nightmares. Kayla hammered the override. The doors slammed shut just as bony fingers scraped across the mesh gate. For one frozen breath, all 4 stared at each other in the flickering red light. Outside, the ship groaned like a beast in agony. Helix laughed, a sound bordering on hysteria. "Next time, we salvage empty rocks, yeah?" Voss managed a grin through blood and cracked armor. "Next time." The lift groaned downward, toward the docking bay, toward the stars, and maybe toward survival if the reactor's wrath didn't catch them first. The cargo lift rattled down its shaft, each groan of metal reminding Kayla that this ancient vessel wanted to bury them with its cursed dead. Sparks flickered from the control panel, the override barely held, and the infected above pounded against the sealed gate like a wave of fists and claws. Voss slumped against the cage wall. Blood soaked his thigh armor. His face, bruised and pale, betrayed how close death crouched over his shoulder. Helix knelt beside him, trying to tie off the worst of it with a shredded pack strap. Gore pressed his back to the gate, shotgun trained upward, flinching at every thud from the horde overhead. Kayla forced herself to breathe. Focus. Survive. Finish the job. She checked the timer blinking in her visor. 0, 1 to 27. Less than 90 seconds before the core went nova. When the lift slammed to a halt at the docking bay level, they staggered into a hangar that felt more tomb than exit, half buried under collapsed bulkheads, ship hulls fused with parasite vines. Their tug, the hardscrap, squatted at the far end, jury-rigged to dock on an alien vessel never meant for human hands. Gore fired a burst over his shoulder, blasting apart a crawler that had leapt from a shadowed girder. Helix half-dragged, half-carried Voss toward the tug's hatch, swearing under his breath. Kayla fired her last rounds at the advancing shadows pouring from ventilation ducts and ceiling cracks, hungry eyes reflecting reactor fire and greed for living flesh. Inside the tug, Helix slapped the hatch control. Gore stumbled in last, punching the manual lock. The door sealed with a bang just as claws screeched across its outer plating. Kayla fell into the pilot seat, fingers dancing over ignition. Hardscrap's old thrusters sputtered, then roared to life with a sound like a dying bear coughing up fire. She didn't wait for clearance or diagnostics, just slammed the throttle forward. Behind them, through the cockpit viewplate, the silent Viceroy's hull pulsed with angry, leaking light. The reactor's death scream vibrated through the tug's frame as they lurched free of the docking clamps. "Come on, girl, hold together," Kayla whispered, voice raw. Gore braced himself over Voss, shielding him as G-forces slammed them into acceleration. Helix clung to the overhead, laughing like a madman as the infected swarm battered the inside of the docking collar, too late to drag them back into the grave. The stars tilted. The tug punched clear of the Viceroy's gravity well. And then the ship behind them bloomed in a terrible silent flower, an artificial nova ripping the parasites, the hull, and every secret chamber into stardust. The shockwave battered the tug's aft plating, alarms howling. But the human salvage crew rode it out, bruised and bloodied and alive. In the silence after, only their ragged breathing filled the cabin. Kayla wiped her eyes and laughed, not from joy, but because the nightmare was over, and tomorrow's nightmares would have to wait. Gore glanced at her. "So, Captain, any salvage left to sell?" Kayla's grin showed cracked teeth. "A black box, maybe some untainted data cores, enough to keep the hard scrap flying." Helix kicked the bulkhead softly. "Next job better be a mineral rock with zero chance of crawling corpses, or I swear I'll mutiny." Voss, half-conscious but alive, managed a rasp of a laugh. "If you mutiny, you're cleaning the head for a year." Outside the viewport, the graveyard of the Viceroy faded behind them, a silent warning to every scavenger, pirate, and would-be king of salvage. Some wrecks are dead for a reason.